The sun was beating down hard on the streets of downtown Los Angeles, turning the movie set into something that felt more like an oven than a workplace. It was the middle of July, and the air was thick with heat and the smell of hot asphalt, vehicle exhaust, and the distinct metallic tang of staged smoke. The location was a maze of yellow tape, heavy cables snaking across the sidewalk like black pythons, and massive trailers lined up one after another. Everywhere you looked, people were rushing. Crew members were shouting instructions into headsets, prop masters were running around with fake guns, and lighting technicians were adjusting huge reflectors to get the sun glare just right. In the absolute center of all this chaos was Keanu Reeves. He was standing near an overturned car, his clothes covered in dust and fake blood, waiting for the signal to start running again. This wasn't the glamorous part of movie making. This was the waiting game. He had been doing the same high-intensity stunt scene over and over for the last 4 hours. It was physically draining, even for someone who took fitness as seriously as he did. You could see the fatigue in his shoulders, the way he rolled his neck to get the tension out. He wasn't complaining, though. That wasn't his style. He just stood there, focused, staying in character while the crew fixed a camera angle. Finally, the director's voice cracked over the loudspeaker, announcing a longer break. It was lunchtime for the crew, but Keanu didn't feel like eating. He felt like he needed to escape the noise for a few minutes. The constant yelling of action and cut was starting to ring in his ears. He waved away a personal assistant who was trying to hand him a phone or a script and started walking toward the edge of the perimeter. He just wanted to find a quiet corner to breathe some air that didn't smell like movie magic. As he walked away from the main set, the noise began to fade behind him. The frantic energy of the action movie seemed to melt away with every step he took toward the row of equipment trucks parked in the back lot. It was strange how there could be two different worlds just 50 yards apart. On one side, explosions and fake gunshots, on the other, just a normal, hot afternoon in the city. Keanu found a spot of shade under an old oak tree near the fence line. He took a slow drink from a water bottle and wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. He leaned against the rough bark of the tree, closing his eyes for a second to just let the silence wash over him. He was used to busy sets, but sometimes it was just too much. He valued these small moments of peace more than most people knew. It was then that he heard a sound. It wasn't a mechanical noise or a human voice. It was the heavy, rhythmic sound of breathing. Keanu opened his eyes and looked down. That was when he saw the dog. It was a large German shepherd, lying on the patchy grass just a few feet away from him. At first, Keanu thought it might be one of the trained animal actors brought in for the movie, but as he looked closer, something felt different. This dog wasn't looking for treats. It wasn't looking at the people or the cameras. The dog was just sitting there, watching the world with a look of intense, calm focus. It had a thick coat of black and tan fur, and around its muzzle, the fur had turned a snowy white. The dog looked old, but in a strong, dignified way, like a retired soldier watching a parade. Keanu stayed very still, not wanting to startle the animal. He has always loved animals, finding their company much easier and more honest than the company of people. He didn't approach the dog immediately. He just observed. The dog had a presence about it that commanded respect. It was sitting perfectly upright, its ears perked up, listening to the wind. It didn't look like a pet. It had a certain stillness to it, a discipline that you don't usually see in a family dog. Even though the dog was resting, it looked ready to move in a split second if it had to. There was a worn leather collar around its neck, and Keanu noticed a small tag hanging from it, glinting in the sunlight. He couldn't read it from this distance, but he was curious. Why was this beautiful, serious dog sitting here alone on the edge of a chaotic movie set? The dog seemed to sense that Keanu was watching him. Slowly, the German Shepherd turned its head. Its eyes were dark and intelligent. There was no fear in the dog's gaze, and there was no aggression either. It was a look of assessment. The dog looked Keanu up and down, as if checking to see if he was a threat or a friend. Keanu lowered his hand slowly, keeping his palm open and fingers relaxed, a universal sign of peace. "It's a hot day to be wearing a fur coat, isn't it?" Keanu said softly, keeping his voice low and gentle. He wasn't talking to the dog like he would talk to a baby. He talked to it like it was a person. The dog's ears twitched at the sound of his voice, but it didn't stand up. It just let out a soft huff, a dog's version of a nod, and settled back down on the grass, though it kept its eyes locked on Keanu. There was a sadness in those eyes that Keanu recognized immediately. It was the look of someone who had seen a lot, who had been through hard times, and was now just looking for a place to rest. It reminded him of the way he sometimes felt after a long, difficult shoot, a mixture of exhaustion and pride, with a little bit of loneliness mixed in. Keanu felt a pull toward the animal. He usually ignored the distractions on set, keeping to himself so he could stay focused on his work. But this was different. This wasn't a distraction, it felt like a necessary connection. He pushed himself off the tree and took 2 slow steps forward. He stopped again, waiting for permission. The dog watched him. Then, surprisingly, the old dog thumped its tail against the ground once. It was a small gesture, but it was an invitation. Keanu crouched down, bringing himself to the dog's eye level. He didn't tower over the animal, he made himself small. He wanted the dog to know that he wasn't in charge here. "Hey there," Keanu whispered. "I'm Keanu." He extended his hand again, palm up. The dog leaned forward slowly, sniffing his fingertips. The dog's nose was wet and cold. Keanu waited patiently. He knew that trust wasn't given, it was earned. After a long moment, the dog seemed to decide that Keanu was okay. The animal nudged its heavy head against Keanu's hand, accepting the touch. It was a simple moment, just a man and a dog meeting in the shade, but for some reason, the noise of the movie set seemed to disappear completely. Keanu stroked the soft fur behind the dog's ears, feeling the rise and fall of the animal's chest. He could feel the strength in the dog's body, even through its old age. This wasn't just a stray. This was a dog that had a job once, a dog that had a purpose. Keanu wanted to know the story behind those tired, wise eyes. He had a feeling that this dog had a history that was far more interesting than any movie script he had ever read. While Keanu was busy scratching the exact spot behind the German Shepherd's ear that seemed to make the dog's leg twitch with happiness, a shadow fell over them. Keanu looked up to see a man standing there. He wasn't part of the movie crew. He wasn't holding a clipboard or a camera. He was a police officer, dressed in a uniform that looked like it had seen a lot of hard days. The badge on his chest was polished bright, but the man's face looked tired and worn, like he had been carrying a heavy weight for a very long time. He looked like someone who had seen too much of the world's darker side. The officer stood there for a moment, watching them. He didn't look angry. In fact, a small, tired smile was tugging at the corner of his mouth. It was rare to see his dog this comfortable with a stranger, especially on a loud movie set. "I'm sorry if he's bothering you," the officer said. His voice was deep and gravelly, sounding like rocks crunching under boots. Rex usually doesn't like people getting this close. He's a bit grumpy in his old age. Keanu shook his head gently, careful not to stop petting the dog. No, he's not bothering me at all. We were just getting to know each other. He's a beautiful dog. You can tell he's got a lot of heart. The officer walked closer, his boots making a heavy thud on the pavement. That he does. I'm his handler. Well, I was his handler. Now I'm just his retirement buddy. He held out a hand, and Keanu took it. The grip was firm and calloused. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Reeves. We watch your movies back at the precinct on slow nights. Keanu smiled that humble smile of his, the one where he looks slightly embarrassed by the praise. Please, just call me Keanu. And it's an honor to meet Rex. He feels like a special dog. He is, the officer said, looking down at the animal with a look of pure love in his eyes. He's not just a pet. He's a hero. We worked together for nearly 10 years. He's the kind of partner who would take a bullet for you without blinking an eye. We've been in car chases, we've found missing kids in the woods, and we've cleared buildings that weren't safe for anyone else to enter. He has a Medal of Valor sitting in a box at home. Keanu looked at Rex with a newfound level of respect. He ran his hand down the dog's back, feeling the strong muscles that were now hidden under a layer of fat and old age. 10 years is a long time, Keanu said softly. He must have seen a lot. He did, the officer replied, a sigh escaping his lips. He crossed his arms and leaned against the nearby fence, the stress of his situation finally showing on his face. But that's the problem. The life of a canine is hard on their bodies. All the jumping, running, and fighting, it takes a toll. Rex had to retire last year. His hips just gave out. The vet says it's severe arthritis and dysplasia. His joints are basically grinding together every time he moves. Keanu frowned. He watched Rex closely. The dog was lying down now, but Keanu noticed that he was breathing a little heavier than normal. When Rex shifted his weight, his back legs didn't move smoothly, they kind of slid awkwardly against the grass. The dog tried to hide it, putting on a brave face just like a good soldier would, but Keanu could see the pain in his eyes. It was a sharp, grim look that the dog couldn't quite mask. Is there anything the doctors can do? Keanu asked. He stopped petting for a second and looked at the officer, his face full of genuine concern. He wasn't just asking to make conversation. He really wanted to know. The officer looked down at his boots and kicked a small rock. He looked uncomfortable, like he didn't want to talk about his problems with a movie star. There are options, he said slowly. There are surgeries to fix the hips, and there are expensive medicines for the inflammation. But the city insurance only covers them while they are working. Once they retire, the medical bills are all on the handler. He paused, looking around the movie set at all the expensive equipment and the fancy cars. The truth is, Mr. Reeves? Keanu, the money isn't great. I love Rex, and I took him in the day he retired. He's my family. He sleeps at the foot of my bed. But the medication he needs costs hundreds of dollars a month, and the surgery is thousands. I've been picking up extra shifts, working security details like this one just to pay for his pills. But last week, the vet told me he needs a new treatment plan, something stronger, or he's going to be in constant pain. I honestly don't know how I'm going to afford it. Keanu stayed quiet for a moment. He looked at the dog, who was looking up at the officer with absolute loyalty. Rex didn't care about the money. He just knew that this man was his person, and he would stay by his side no matter what. It broke Keanu's heart to think of such a loyal animal suffering because of money. He knew that feeling of helplessness, where you want to fix something for someone you love, but your hands are tied because of the cold reality of the world. "It doesn't seem right," Keanu said, his voice getting a little tighter. "A dog that gives everything to protect people shouldn't have to hurt just because he got old." "No, it doesn't," the officer agreed, wiping a bit of sweat from his forehead. "But that's the way it is. I just bring him with me when I can so he isn't alone at home. He hates being alone. He spent his whole life working, being by my side. Retirement has been hard on him. He misses the job." Keanu crouched back down. He looked directly into Rex's dark eyes. He saw the intelligence there, the history. He saw a dog who had spent a lifetime running toward danger while everyone else ran away. And now, the danger was just old age and pain. Keanu reached out and scratched the dog under the chin, a spot that made Rex close his eyes and let out a long, contented groan. "You're a good boy, Rex," Keanu whispered. "You don't have to worry anymore." The officer watched the interaction, feeling a lump in his throat. He was used to people ignoring them, or just seeing the dog as a tool. But here was one of the most famous actors in the world, treating his retired partner like he was the most important individual on the set. "You really have a way with animals," the officer said, trying to lighten the mood. "He hasn't let anyone touch him like that since he left the force." Keanu stood up and wiped his hands on his pants. He looked at the officer with a serious expression. The playful mood was gone. He had heard enough. He understood the situation completely. He saw a good man trying his best to take care of his best friend, and he saw a dog that deserved to live out his golden years without hurting. "Where are you guys parked?" Keanu asked suddenly. "Just over there," the officer pointed toward a dusty black pickup truck parked near the security gate. "We were actually about to head out. I didn't want to get in the way of the filming." "Don't worry about getting in the way," Keanu said. He put a hand on the officer's shoulder. It was a gesture of solidarity. "Walk with me to the truck. I want to hear more about some of the cases you guys worked on." The officer looked surprised but happy. "Really, you want to hear about Rex?" "Absolutely," Keanu said. "I think his story is way better than the movie we're making today." As they started walking slowly toward the truck, Rex struggled to get up. His back legs shook with the effort. Without a second thought, Keanu stepped forward and offered his arm for support. He didn't treat the dog like he was fragile or a burden. He just helped him, letting the dog lean his heavy weight against his leg. Together, the three of them walked toward the truck, two humans and one very special dog, leaving the fake world of the movie set behind for a moment to deal with something very real. The crew members watched them go, wondering what the famous actor was up to, but none of them could have predicted what was about to happen next. The walk to the parking lot was slow. It wasn't because the distance was far, but because every step Rex took was a struggle. Keanu stayed right beside the big dog, matching his pace perfectly. He had his hand on Rex's shoulder the whole time, not pushing or pulling, just offering a steady support so the animal wouldn't fall. The officer walked on the other side, watching them with a look of grateful surprise. He was used to people walking past him, or even crossing the street to avoid his intimidating-looking dog, but here was one of the biggest movie stars in the world acting like a gentle helper. The asphalt of the lot was baking in the sun, radiating heat that rose up in waves. It wasn't a comfortable day to be walking, especially not for a dog with bad joints. Keanu didn't seem to care about the sweat dripping down his neck or his expensive costume getting dirty. His entire focus was on Rex. Every time Rex's back leg slipped a little on the gravel, Keanu was there to steady him. "You know," the officer said, breaking the silence as they walked, "he wasn't always this slow. There was a time when this dog could outrun a cheetah. I remember one night, we were chasing a suspect through an industrial park. It was dark, raining, and there were fences everywhere. I was losing my breath, ready to give up, but Rex didn't stop. He went over fences, under pipes, through mud. He caught the guy and held him by the leg until I got there. He saved me from having to run another mile, that's for sure." Keanu looked down at the dog, imagining the young, strong version of Rex sprinting through the rain. "He has a lot of courage," Keanu said. "You can see it in his eyes. Even now, when he's hurting, he's not complaining. He just keeps going." "That's the hardest part," the officer replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. "He never complains. That's why I know he's in so much pain. When a dog like him finally shows that he's hurting, you know it's bad. He's too proud to show weakness unless he just can't take it anymore." They finally reached the old pickup truck. It was parked far away from the fancy trailers used by the main actors. The truck was a faded gray color, with a few dents in the side bumper and rust forming around the wheel wells. It looked like a hard-working truck, the kind that carries lumber or tools, not a movie star vehicle. But in the back, the officer had set up a comfortable little spot. There was a thick layer of soft blankets and a shallow bowl of water clipped to the side. It showed how much he cared about his partner. Rex looked up at the tailgate of the truck. It wasn't very high, but for a dog with his condition, it looked like a mountain. The dog let out a low sigh, his tail drooping slightly. He tried to put his front paws up, but his back legs shook violently and couldn't get the traction to push the rest of his body up. He slid back down to the ground, looking embarrassed. "Easy, boy," the officer said quickly. He stepped forward and grabbed a specialized ramp that was leaning against the side of the truck bed. He unfolded it. It was a simple, metal ramp covered with a non-slip surface. "I've got this. We use the ramp now." The officer guided Rex toward the ramp, but the dog hesitated. Rex looked at the ramp, then back at the officer, then finally over at Keanu. It was a strange moment. The dog seemed to sense that this was the moment where they would say goodbye. He didn't want to go. Keanu crouched down again so he was face to face with the dog. He didn't rush them. He just waited. He placed his hand on Rex's chest, feeling the strong heartbeat. "It's okay, Rex," Keanu said softly. "You can go. Your dad is taking good care of you." Rex let out a long breath and rested his heavy forehead against Keanu's shoulder. It was a moment of pure trust. The dog closed his eyes and leaned his entire weight into Keanu for just a few seconds. It wasn't just a pet leaning on a human, it felt like a soldier saying goodbye to a brother. In that quiet moment, Keanu felt a strange connection. He understood this dog. They both lived lives of service in a way, Rex protecting the city, and Keanu entertaining the world. They both knew what it was like to be expected to be strong all the time. The officer watched this with tears stinging his eyes. He had never seen Rex act this way with a stranger. "He really likes you, Keanu," he said. "I think he knows a good person when he sees one." Keanu smiled sadly, scratching behind the dog's ears one last time. "I like him too. He's a good boy. You take care of him, all right?" "I will," the officer promised. He gently guided Rex onto the ramp, and with a little effort, the dog hobbled up and into the bed of the truck. He immediately turned around and lay down on the blankets, resting his head on his paws to watch them. The officer wiped his hands on his pants and turned back to Keanu. "Well, I should get going. I don't want to hold up your production. Thank you for walking with us. It really meant a lot." The man extended his hand again, and Keanu took it. But this time, Keanu didn't let go immediately. He looked at the officer's worn-out uniform, the gray hairs on his own head, and then back at the old truck and the suffering dog. The conversation about money, about the vet bills, and about the surgery was playing over and over in his mind. He thought about all the money being spent on the movie set just yards away, millions of dollars on explosions and costumes, and yet, here was a real hero who couldn't afford to fix his legs. It didn't sit right with Keanu. He wasn't the kind of person to just feel bad and do nothing. He had always believed that if you had the power to help someone, you had the responsibility to do it. "Wait a second," Keanu said, glancing back toward the set where the crew was starting to gather again. "Don't leave yet." The officer looked confused. He checked his watch. "Is something wrong? Did I forget something?" "No, nothing is wrong," Keanu said, shaking his head. He looked at the officer with a serious expression. "I just have an idea. But I need you to wait here for 2 minutes. Can you do that?" Sure," the officer said, looking puzzled. "I can wait." Keanu smiled a reassuring smile. "Good. Just stay here with Rex. I'll be right back." Without another word, Keanu turned and started jogging back toward the main set. He moved with a new sense of urgency now. The break was over, and the lighting crew was already resetting the scene for the next shot. Assistants were running around trying to find him. "Keanu! Keanu! We need you on set in 5 minutes!" someone shouted. He ignored them at first, heading straight for his trailer. He needed something. He wasn't going to let that dog drive away in pain without doing something about it. The peaceful walk was over, and now it was time for action. The crew members watched in confusion as the star of the movie disappeared into his trailer and came back out holding a small leather checkbook. He wasn't heading for the cameras, though. He was walking back toward the parking lot. The whispers started immediately among the crew. "Where is he going? I thought we were filming. Why does he have his checkbook?" But Keanu didn't care about the whispers. He had a mission. He marched back to the old truck with a look of determination on his face that was more intense than any action scene he had filmed that day. The officer was standing by the driver's side door, looking nervous as Keanu approached. "I thought you had to work," the officer said. "I do," Keanu replied. "But this is more important." The officer stood by the rusty door of his truck, looking totally confused. He watched as Keanu flipped open a small, worn leather checkbook. The sun glinted off the metal pen in Keanu's hand. To the officer, it looked like a scene from a movie, but not the kind he usually watched. This felt surreal. He was just a regular guy, a civil servant who lived paycheck to paycheck, and standing in front of him was a millionaire movie star getting ready to write a check in the middle of a dusty parking lot. "Keanu, really, you don't have to do this," the officer said, holding up his hands as if to stop him. His voice sounded shaky. "I didn't tell you my story to get money. I was just talking. I know how people are. I didn't mean to put you on the spot." Keanu didn't look up from the checkbook immediately. He was focused, his face calm and serious. Finally, he looked the officer right in the eye. "I know you didn't ask," Keanu said gently, "that's exactly why I want to do it. You guys have spent years taking care of us. You've run toward danger so other people could run away. Rex put his life on the line more times than we can count. It doesn't feel right that he has to suffer now just because the system doesn't take care of him after he retires." The officer opened his mouth to argue again. It was a matter of pride. He had worked hard his whole life, and accepting charity even from someone he admired felt wrong. But Keanu stopped him with a firm but kind shake of the head. "Please," Keanu said. "Let me do this. Not for you. For him. Look at him." The officer turned and looked at Rex. The big dog was resting his chin on the side of the truck bed, watching them. His breathing was still a little heavy, and his eyes looked tired. The officer knew exactly what Keanu was talking about. He remembered the nights Rex had whimpered in his sleep because of the pain, and the guilty feeling the officer got every time he had to measure out the cheap pain medication because he couldn't afford the better stuff. He knew Rex deserved to run and play without hurting, even if he was old. The officer's shoulders dropped, and he let out a long breath. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay. Thank you." Keanu nodded once and turned his attention back to the check. He uncapped his pen. The only sound was the scratching of the pen tip against the paper and the distant noise of the movie set. A few crew members had noticed something was happening and were standing by the edge of the set, watching curiously. They couldn't hear what was being said, but they could see the famous actor and the police officer having an intense, quiet moment near the old truck. Keanu wrote quickly. He didn't just write a small amount. He thought about the surgery the vet had mentioned, the rehabilitation, the special food, and the future medications. He wanted to make sure there was enough left over so the officer never had to worry about Rex's bills again. When he pulled the pen away, he ripped the check from the book. He didn't hand it over immediately. Instead, he looked at the paper one last time, folded it carefully, and held it out. "This is for the surgery," Keanu said. "And for the best medicine they have. If there is anything left over, put it toward a fund for the other retired dogs in your unit. No dog should have to suffer." The officer took the check. His hands were trembling a little as he unfolded it to look at it. When his eyes focused on the numbers written there, his jaw dropped. It was more money than he made in 6 months. It was enough to change Rex's life completely. The officer looked up, his eyes wide and shiny with unshed tears. He tried to speak, but the words got stuck in his throat. He looked at Keanu, then at the check, then back at Keanu. This is too much," the officer stammered. "I can't." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Keanu said, reaching out and gripping the officer's shoulder again. "Rex is a hero. Heroes take care of each other. Just make sure he gets the best doctor in town. I don't want any shortcuts." By this point, a small group of people had gathered nearby. A makeup artist, a camera operator, and a few security guards were watching. They could see the emotion on the officer's face. They had seen a lot of things on movie sets: explosions, car crashes, famous actors yelling, but this was different. This was real. The silence that hung over the parking lot was heavy with respect. The crew finally realized that the action happening off-set was more powerful than anything happening on camera. The officer wiped his eyes with the sleeve of his uniform, trying to compose himself. He reached out and shook Keanu's hand again, squeezing it hard. "You have no idea what this means to us," he said, his voice cracking. "Rex is my best friend. I was so scared I was going to lose him. You're giving him his life back. Keanu smiled warmly. Just give him a scratch behind the ears for me. I will, the officer promised. He turned to the truck and reached over the side to stroke Rex's head. Did you hear that, buddy? We're going to get you fixed up. Rex's tail thumped weakly against the blankets, picking up on the relief in his owner's voice. Keanu took a step back, putting his hands in his pockets. He looked happy, but he also looked like he was ready to get back to work. He didn't want to make a big scene or wait for a thank you. For him, the satisfaction of knowing the dog would be okay was enough. You should get going, Keanu said. Get him to the vet before the traffic gets bad. Yes, you're right, the officer said. He quickly folded the check and put it safely into his shirt pocket, right over his heart. He climbed into the driver's seat of the truck and stuck the key in the ignition. The old engine roared to life with a sputter. Through the open window, the officer leaned out. Keanu, if you ever need security, or anything, you call me. Seriously. Keanu laughed, a genuine, light sound. I'll keep that in mind. Drive safe. The officer put the truck in gear. As he pulled away, he honked the horn twice, a short, friendly beep. Keanu stood there and watched the truck drive off until it turned the corner and disappeared from sight. He stood there for a moment longer, just looking at the empty space where the truck had been. The people who had been watching started to disperse, going back to their jobs, but they were buzzing with energy. They were whispering to each other about what they had just seen. They knew they weren't just working with an action star, they were working with a genuinely good man. Keanu took a deep breath and turned back toward the movie set. The fake world of explosions and lights was waiting for him. He straightened his jacket and put his game face back on. But as he walked back, his step seemed a little lighter. He had done something real today, something that actually mattered, and as he stepped back onto the concrete of the set, ready to run through the next scene, he knew that no matter how the movie turned out, today had been a success. The mood on the movie set shifted completely after the truck drove away. It wasn't a loud change, like an explosion or a shout. It was a quiet shift, like the air clearing after a storm passes. Keanu walked back toward the center of the action, but the energy around him felt different. The crew members, who were usually buzzing with stress and focused only on their technical jobs, were watching him with a new kind of respect. They had just seen a side of their coworker that cameras never captured. They saw a man who didn't just act like a hero on screen but lived like one in real life. When Keanu stepped back in front of the cameras, he was ready to work. He didn't ask for a break. He didn't complain about the heat. He put his game face back on, becoming the tough, action character the script required. But there was a difference in his eyes. The heaviness was gone. He looked lighter, more focused. When the director yelled action for the next scene, Keanu threw himself into the stunt with more energy than he had shown all day. The scene was a fight sequence, requiring him to run, jump, and roll across the pavement. He did it perfectly on the first take. Usually, the crew would just move on to the next setup, grumbling about the heat. This time, when the director yelled cut, a few of the crew members actually clapped. It wasn't just for the stunt, it was for the man. The lighting guy gave him a nod and a thumbs up. Even the stern-faced producer, who was usually counting every minute of wasted time, cracked a smile. They were all proud to be there, proud to be working with someone who treated a retired police dog with more dignity than most people treat each other. As the weeks went by, the movie finished shooting and the crew packed up their equipment. In the busy world of Hollywood, people usually forget about a job as soon as it's done and move on to the next project. But this story stuck. It didn't make the big news headlines right away because Keanu didn't want it to. He didn't hold a press conference. He didn't post a photo of the check on the internet. He asked the officer to keep it quiet, wanting to do the good deed just for the sake of doing it, not for the fame. But the world has a way of finding out about kindness. The story started to spread through word of mouth. The vet clinic was the first to talk. When the officer brought Rex in for the surgery, the staff was amazed by the sudden change in the dog's fortune. The receptionists and vet technicians were so moved by the story that they told their friends and families. They told people how a stranger had stepped in to save a hero's life. A few months later, the officer sent a video to Keanu. It was a simple clip, filmed on a phone, no fancy editing. The video showed Rex in a grassy park on a sunny day. It was only a few weeks after his surgery. In the video, the dog was trotting. He wasn't running like a puppy, but he was moving without that painful limp that had held him back for so long. His tail was wagging high in the air, and he had a toy in his mouth. He looked happy. He looked free. The pain was gone. When Keanu watched the video, he was alone in his living room. He smiled at the screen, watching the old dog enjoy his new life. He didn't need a standing ovation or an award to feel good about this. Seeing Rex running in the grass was the only reward he needed. It was the perfect ending to the story for him. He knew that the money had done its job. Eventually, the story leaked online. Someone from the vet clinic posted a picture of Rex with a caption thanking the mysterious angel who had helped him. Fans on the internet quickly figured out who it was, connecting the dots between the movie set location and the German Shepherd. The internet exploded with reactions. But unlike most celebrity news, where people argue and criticize, this story brought everyone together. Thousands of comments poured in from all over the world. People shared stories of their own pets, their own struggles, and how much Keanu's act of kindness meant to them. What touched people the most wasn't the money. It was the way Keanu did it. He didn't make a show of it. He didn't want the credit. He saw a problem, stepped in, and fixed it. He treated an old, retired dog with the same importance as a high-paying business deal. In a world that often feels selfish and harsh, the story of Keanu and Rex became a beacon of hope. It reminded people that good guys still exist. The officer later gave an interview to a small local newspaper. He told the reporter, "I always looked up to Keanu as an actor. He makes incredible movies. But after that day, I look up to him as a man. He didn't just save my dog, he reminded me that there is still good in this world." Rex is going to live the rest of his life in comfort and love, and that is a gift I can never repay. Years later, when the movie was finally released in theaters, audiences cheered for Keanu on the screen as he fought bad guys and saved the day. It was exciting to watch, full of explosions and drama. But if you looked closely, you could see a little bit of the real man shining through the character. For Keanu, the movie was just work. The real victory wasn't on the big screen. The real victory was knowing that somewhere, in a quiet backyard, an old German Shepherd was sleeping soundly in the sun, pain-free, surrounded by love. That was the happy ending that mattered most. And for everyone who heard the story, it was a lesson they would never forget. True heroes don't always wear costumes, and sometimes the most powerful action you can take is just being kind to someone who needs it.